Shortly after my career began, the first feedback I received was, "I don't know what you did, but that grew out better than any haircut I've ever had." At the time, I had a basic knowledge of what I had done differently, but it wasn't until many years later that I truly understood its importance. That process helped me realize a fundamental flaw with conventional hairdressing. This episode is dedicated to those who like to take things apart, learn, and then put it all back together again. Where's my screwdriver? You're listening to the Tom Zappala podcast. I can't remember how many times I've heard people speak about choppy layers, heavy shapes, and haircuts that just grew out poorly. I might be different, but whenever I hear about or see problems with the same thing over and over, I insist on finding out why it's happening and become obsessed with finding a solution. Maybe it's just me, but it seems that hairdressers aren't really wired that way. It's one of the many reasons I don't think of myself as a hairdresser. I am, at my core, an analytical, logical, and technically minded problem solver with neurodivergent challenges. The point is, I've always thought that hairdressers don't think about hair or see shapes the way that I do. To me, it seems that they think about it in very static and absolute two-dimensional terms, filtered through a creative lens. I see things differently. I see hair as fluid and perfect and changing throughout our lives. To that point, when cutting someone's hair, I am thinking about and considering the following principle. The provided shape must evolve positively and in support of its inevitable growth. That principle and practical reality are the basis of this entire episode. So let's get right to it. How does all that relate to the way I cut hair differently? How do I go about achieving the results and feedback I do? It all has to do with a fundamental understanding of geometric principles, including shape and their spatial relationships. Let me explain. What shape is a human head? That's really the question here. The answer is simple. A human head is inherently and imperfectly round. The primary reason for many common and repeated haircut frustrations is that hairdressers are taught to cut straight, blunt lines on an inherently round object. That geometric contradiction, combined with a creative and controlling approach to hair, is precisely why people experience haircuts that require styling to look flattering and need constant adjustments every 6 to 8 weeks. Here's the thing. In the art world, illustrators and painters often start their static creations with structured, simple, straight lines. I think this is where hairdressing got things wrong. Hair is not fixed or static. Cutting straight, blunt lines, even if those lines are altered later during the process, is fundamentally flawed. Cutting straight, blunt lines on an inherently round object. That is why haircuts often grow up poorly, having shapes that lead to many of those common problems. It's also why people are emotionally traumatized or triggered by the word layers. Blunt straight lines in any haircut do not allow a shape to evolve favorably. Instead, as the hair grows, the shape will become congested, bulky or boxy, and overall become increasingly unflattering. I don't cut hair that way. I never have. In the simplest terms, I don't cut straight, blunt lines into the constantly evolving filament growing out of a naturally round object. Instead, I find it prudent to engage with intelligent design principles using well-honed techniques that produce shapes supportive of the medium. In other words, I practice the opposite of what most hairdressers do and think. That's been the secret to my success for more than 30 years. I'm often asked, how did I learn this, or who trained me? The truth is, no one did. No hairdresser taught me how to cut hair, and certainly not the way that I do. Every class I attended early in my career was either indoctrination into product selling or how to better control hair through heat styling. Hairdressing classes never focused on the things that I thought were important. There were never proper teachers, and certainly never professors. Once I stumbled onto the importance of basic geometric principles and witnessed how they produced results that clients immediately and continually validated, I tuned out hairdressers. I tuned out the entire industry. Why wouldn't I? My clients were happy and telling me that I had given them the best haircut they'd ever had. Ultimately, when learning how to cut hair well, I chose to work it out myself with the help and feedback of those who sat, and still do, sit in my chair. Oddly enough, hairdressers seem to think that they should be teaching one another. That's why things never change. That's why people are sharing with me the same haircutting frustrations today that they did 30 years ago. I have always thought that the person who occupies my chair is the only person I should be listening to and learning from. That is how I have always chosen to learn and improve. After 3 decades, I believe that cutting hair well favors a disposition that understands geometric and spatial awareness, along with a keen desire to develop exceptional communication skills. That is especially and consistently beneficial when providing supportive shapes to people with challenging hair. As long as the feedback I receive continues to validate my approach and principles, I remain committed to continuing this journey just as I always have. Along the way, whenever there are opportunities to improve the process, shapes, and outcomes, I enthusiastically welcome the chance to listen and learn. All that is required of you is the ability and desire to communicate with me. That's all for this episode. Thanks so much for listening. I'll talk to you next time.